Gil here with the Sailing Vessel Dream Chaser, and in this series of replacing and rebuilding and rebedding a Dorado box, we've actually been able to show quite a few different tips and techniques and tricks that we hope you'll find useful if you're doing any kind of work on your boat, especially on the deck, or if you happen to have a leaky tiki, or I heard this term the other day, a China clipper. These boats have a lot of nicknames around being teak decks and potentially leaking. So we've shown how to remove the Dorado box from the deck and actually how it was adhered to the deck. This is useful not only for a Dorado box but several other attachments you may have on your deck. Things like a deck box or dock box. It could be you know, the not davits but the V-shaped pieces of wood that you might set your dinghy on deck. A lot of these things will be adhered to the deck in the same fashion. So hopefully this will be able to translate to several other things that you might run into on your boat. Secondly, we showed how to inspect for core damage. So once we removed this Dorado box, you know, we had screw holes that went down through the teak deck, through the top layer of fiberglass deck, and into the core below it. And we showed how to go about inspecting that and seeing what the quality or the quality of that core was. In our case, it required a little bit of epoxying. It wasn't saturated or soaked, but to be safe, we did prep those a little bit better. So thirdly, not just the prepping of the actual surface for these holes and inspection of what that core looked like, but also how to go about inspecting it and repairing it. So if you recall in episode 2 of this series, we actually drilled holes down through the teak, through the upper layer of fiberglass, and down into the core without going through that bottom layer of fiberglass. We cleared that out with a small bent nail on the end of a drill just to sort of waller out that core a little thicker. And then we injected epoxy into that and filled that up to in the hole of where the core was, as well as level with the deck. That essentially gives us a solid core again. It took out any of that potential wet core where those screws had gone through, filled it with epoxy, and then in our case we're going to actually drill holes at a different location, so we don't have to worry about it. But if you were going to drill in the same location, it gives another good solid surface for a screw to adhere to. So what I want to do is use a bit that's larger than the holes. I definitely want them to be bigger than they are currently. And when I fill that epoxy and we re-drill them, I'll drill them in a different location so I don't have to worry about it. But ideally I want this to be a completely hardened surface when I get through. So the next step here is going to be to measure the length of the depth of the cut. And to do that, I'm going to take a small piece of just painter's tape. This is a little bit of an improvisation. I don't have my little clamp that clamps around a drill bit to keep it from going in a certain distance. So what I want to do is go down into this core without going all the way through that roof. So I'm going to take the drill bit, I'm going to hold it right where I want it, and then I'm going to basically just run this tape around it, and I'm going to stop before I hit it. And if you can see this, kind of see that's going to get down into the core, but not all the way down through the lower layer of fiberglass. I'm going to cover this hole up just so I don't end up getting any sawdust down in the bunk below. What I want to watch for is my tape is pushing up just a very little bit, so you got to sort of be cognizant of that as you continue down this path. I'm going to take the next smaller bit here and I'm going to turn it by hand just to get some of the little pieces out of there. I don't know if you can see this. What I want to check here is to see if this is really rotten, this core. And it does feel a little wet, so I'm going to waller some of that out, as I said before, and we'll fill it with epoxy so it gets good and strong again. I didn't have any more of those little West needles that you push the epoxy through, so we're gonna get a little bit creative here. We're gonna use a Ziploc bag, and we're gonna pipe it on as if it were like cake icing or something. So what I'm gonna do is force this right down into a little corner here. I'm just gonna take this And I'm going to pour it. I want to try and get as much as I can just down in that little corner, because this isn't going to take a whole lot of this stuff. So rather than try and work it around in here, this should be the easiest way to do it. There we go. Then I'm just going to pump the epoxy, let it run down in there, and fill each one of these little holes. And then fourth, when we were actually working on the frame, we built the frame for the Dorado box that's going to mount on, we showed how to make some improvements on water drainage. And after inspecting what we found once we pulled the Dorado box off, it sort of became evident that there was a better way to build that frame and build a small baffle that would help distribute the water out the sides of it before it ever gets to the place where we would be most likely to have any intrusion of water into the top of the bunk. And then lastly, the fifth item we're going to show, and it's going to be in this episode that you're about to watch, is how to prep the bronze for reinstallation. In our case, we wanted to polish the bronze where it was going to be visible in the ceiling from the bunk below, so we show how to go about polishing that. It certainly is a controversial subject among sailors and boaters around what do you do with your bronze? Do you spend the time to polish it, or do you just let it patina and have that nice green marine look to it? So more to come on that in this episode. So now we're about to prep the mounting bracket that we're going to bed down on the deck and then put the Dorado box on top of it. What we're going to show here is how to go about drilling the pilot holes to make sure that we bed it good and tight to the deck, and then also the horizontal holes that we're going to drill in the side of the Dorado box that will affix it to the actual mounting bracket itself. So the parts we're going to use today, we have our Dorado box in the new base we made, some drill bits for setting up the pilot holes as well as the countersink holes, a drill, and then we're just going to use some blue painter's tape. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is get a very small drill bit for the pilot hole, and I'm going to use one that's going to be just about the size of, if you look at a screw and you see the shank of the screw and then you see the threads on it, I want something that's just about as thick as the shank but no thicker than that, because I want the actual blades, the little threads, to dig into the corners of the wood. So, we've got that. This base actually sits this way. If you remember, we had this whole baffle to let water exit out the sides. The cowl vent goes up front, this is the hole through the deck. So, and now we will do these holes. I'm also going to go into this front. This is where the actual cowl vent is, so in the event we took some green water over the deck, I think I do want to secure the front side of this too. I'm going to try and do this without it moving. So we now have the sides of that drill. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to drill some holes that we're going to use to affix this down to the deck. And what I want to do is I want to be very careful I don't run it anywhere where the screws are going to be going horizontally. I don't want to run it through any of the drain holes. And I'm probably only going to use 4 screws down onto the deck. So we're going to start with a slightly larger bit for this. And the reason I want a larger bit is, you know, I'm essentially putting 8 holes through this small piece of solid red oak. And what I want to be cautious of is I don't want to get in a situation where I crack the wood. So I'd love to know what you guys think about this. This could be an interesting little debate. I've been trying to decide how to go about doing those horizontal screws. 2 schools of thought. One is drill the hole with a pilot hole and countersink it deep enough that the screw will be all the way buried below the surface, put a teak bung on it, sand it all flat, and you'll see no screw holes. It'll look very bright and finished and beautiful. That's option 1. The second option, and I think it's the way I'm leaning right now, is to actually do the same thing, drill the pilot hole, countersink a deeper hole there, but only enough so that the screw head sits just below the surface of the wood, not covering it up with anything, not going to put varnish over it, not going to put epoxy on it or a bung. you know, these boats called, you know, the leaky tikis, they're called that for a reason, and I'm thinking down the road I might need to open this thing back up and do a little bit of work. And frankly, maybe that's more of a commentary on my own confidence in this particular repair until I see how well it works. But curious what you think. How would you do it if it were your boat? And what's your thoughts on that? I intend to use stainless steel screws, so my thought is it shouldn't rust. The fact that it's exposed to the air, stainless steel can actually corrode and rust, but it's typically when it doesn't have oxygen to it. So I think we're going to be in good shape there and still give us a good surface if we ever have to remove these things down the road. So curious what you think. Leave a comment down below. Love to hear what your thoughts are. It does look a little bit like our old boat, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. I think they're new. Let's wave to them.
Oh, I heard the girl talk about someone coming in.
Yeah?
Yeah, when I was getting a package.
Very cool. Alright, next step here is we're going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of cut these countersinks holes. And it's real important I don't go too deep or too fast here. So you'll notice I'm going to go very slow. And that's as deep as I want to go. All I'm doing right there, if you can see that. Let me get that a little closer. If you can see that, just a slightly countersunk, so the screw head will be flush with that. So now we're going to do the others. And we want to dry fit everything right now. And again, we're going to take this piece, once it's down on the deck, pop it in there, and then we'll run our screws into this, and one in the front. I like it. We're going to start with some butyl tape here. Basically just tear it at the lengths we need. Alright, so what I've done is I've put butyl tape all around this. Let me just pull this up so you can see it. I've got the butyl tape all on here. Just left this on to kind of protect it. And I'm going to run the screws down through it in a minute. I'm about to go put this down on the deck, and I did the same here on the Dorado box. So we'll take it over to the spot where it's going to be mounted, and we'll put it down. So we are about to start the bedding process here. What I'm going to do is line this up with the location that I want this, which for me is going to be very close to its old location. I'm essentially using the marks on the deck from where it was, and I need to make sure that I have, you know, it fits around this opening because this is where the bronze tube is going to come up through. So we're just going to mark the spots where we need to drill these holes. In order to know right where this is, I'm going to basically draw a very small line here as a marker, and also one right here. Very small one here as well. That way I can take this up and peel all this backing off of here. Again, we want to make sure none of this blows away, so I'll put that in the bucket for now. And now it's time to line this up. I don't want to have to pick this up and put it down a bunch, so I'm going to do everything I can to find my spot here at one time. I believe I did right there. I'm not going to press it down until I verify that I'm getting these in these pre-drilled holes. So you've seen me use power tools on a lot of things, but I'm a firm believer in getting things like this started. Make sure you're lined up before you start running it with power tools. So I chose these screws because they were long enough to go through the the mounting plate, through the teak, through the top layer of fiberglass, and into the core. That's exactly what I wanted here. That butyl tape is going to help prevent these things from leaking. Last step, and this is one of those things I learned from the Compass Marine website, specifically on Cruisers Forum. Anyone that's on Cruisers Forum, if you know, Mainsail is the guy's sort of handle name on that particular site. What you do is take a little bit of this butyl tape, form it in a little snake-like deal, and then we want to wrap it around the screw head. Basically, that's just going to be enough to seal that top piece and not let any of that water down in there. Nothing fancy, just building a little tiny cone here. This works even better when you have a countersunk hole like over here on this Dorado box. In our case, we'll be fine here with this. But you can see the consistency here. It's this stuff is unbelievable how far it will stretch before it breaks, and it'll retain that for 10 or 15 years. So it's a great bedding material. This is our mounting bracket ready to take our Dorado box, which we will slide right over that tomorrow and run these screws into it. She's looking good. So if you recall from episode 1 when we were removing all these parts, in the lower bunk when you looked up at the ceiling there was a bronze ring, and that ring and tube basically extend up through the deck. Part of that's visible from down below, and when we were taking it off of the ceiling, one of the screws of the 4 that held it up there, actually the head broke off on it, or the shank broke. So we're about to show how we went about drilling that screw head out of the hole so it was available for us to put a new one in, and then how we cleaned up and polished that bronze so it looked really good. We've got a classic issue here where somebody used the wrong type of a screw in this bronze fitting for the Dorado, and it sheared off when it was coming off of there, so I'm going to work on trying to drill it out. I'm taking a very small drill bit, one that's small enough to go all the way through the hole with some play, and the idea is if I can get some of that screw drilled out, I'm hoping it will little other shavings will break loose and we'll be in good shape here. What I want to do is make sure I've got that divot in just the right centered spot. Looks like I do right there, so now we'll work on getting it through there. Now what I'm going to do is find a bit that has just the same angle as one of these holes so I can clear out the head of it. A little larger than that. I'm going very slow on this. I do not want to scuff this up. And you see what I'm running into is where the corrosion is around this, that is harder than the metal itself, the brass screw or whatever it was. I would think brass and bronze would be fine, but what you're starting to see is it's starting to come out to the hard side over here on this corrosion. Is starting to push the bit a little bit to this side. I'm trying to go very slow and carefully here. I'm just using an old piece of 220 sandpaper here on a block. I want to get it nice and smooth and straight. And I'm hoping I can just sand a little bit of that corrosion off where it's raised. See what it does. And I don't want to take off much of the material in any way here, so I'm just trying to get this scuffed up a little bit. And then we're going to use a metal polish like Barkeeper's Friend. I'm sure all the purists out there are going nuts at this because everybody says just leave bronze to age and patina, it looks better. And you're probably right, but this little ring I'm doing right here is what sits down through the cabin roof. It's what's seen from the bunk. I figure I can polish up this one section. So after a little bit of sanding and a little bit of this barkeeper's friend, if you haven't used this stuff, it is phenomenal for cleaning metal. Stainless steel stanchions take surface rust off great. I'm just using a little green scrub pad here. Could use the white one, which is a little finer, but I've got some pretty good corrosion on here. So, as I mentioned before, this is the piece that comes down through the through the deck, and this part that I'm polishing is what you see in the roof of the bunk. So I'm just gonna run this in little circular motions, work some of this barkeeper's friend into it. It's a cleaner that contains a little bit of oxalic acid, which for anyone who ever wants to clean their decks with chemicals, I'm not a fan of doing it, but if you ever look at teak brightener that you get at marine stores, that's basically what that is. It's oxalic acid. And if you go to a hardware store, I don't know if Lowe's or Home Depot carries it anymore, but I know Ace Hardware's do. It's called wood bleach. It comes in a small, about the size of a margarine container, plastic container that has a powder that you mix it with water. But that's oxalic acid. So Deb and I really hope you enjoy these videos, and certainly if you do, please, down in this corner, I believe it is, click on the like button. It's the thumbs up. It really does help us. We'd appreciate it if you would do that. Kind of shows us that that you like the videos, you found it useful, found it helpful. And then also, please do subscribe to the channel. If you subscribe, we'll automatically send you an email notification or a notification through YouTube if you don't have your email account tied to it. Every time we post a new video, we're trying to post a video every single week. And it's, you know, something that's useful. Maybe it's going to be something about a boat project. Honestly, I'd love a day when we can post a few more videos about our adventures and our trips and sailing aboard her, more so than the repairs. But frankly, right now, it's more repair than sailing.